Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this morning's meeting of Prosperous Overview and Scrutiny Committee. It's a one-item agenda, and it's lovely and warm in here today. Morning, Charlotte. So we'll get straight into the agenda. The first item is apologies. Jonathan?
We received apologies, Chairman, from Philip Hudson, Ross Ward and David Smith.
Are there any more that we know about? I think everybody else is here. And I'd also like to welcome Councillor Jeremy Pert, who's come in for the item number 4. Any declarations of interest? No? Nobody's got shares in Avanti West Coast or anything? We wish. Okay, so the item 3 is the minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of September. Can we sign those off as a true record? I wasn't here, so... Philippa, are you proposing those yet? And Sam has seconded. Sorry. And we'll get straight on to item 4, which is Avanti West Coast Mainline Rail Services. And we've got Mark Osborne to take us through his presentation this morning. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you very much. Hopefully that microphone's working. Does everyone hear me? Great. So I'm Mark Osborne. I'm the Regional Growth Manager covering Staffordshire, Cheshire, but I'm not sure you really want to hear about that. And I've been asked to give an update on our performance over the last few months. Railway performance, lots of data, so I've tried to do quite an overview, if that's okay, and I'll try to answer as many questions as you can. A lot of this data is actually in the public domain, so if you really want to get into it and play about with your heart's content, that information is out there in the public domain. So first I thought I'll just do a quick summary about how the rail industry calculates delay and cancellations, and there's a whole process. There's 200 pages of it, hence why I'm saying I want to give you a quick overview. They've identified over 250 reasons for delay, and I've listed a couple of examples there just to show how they move around. So my favourites are, if points don't work because they haven't got a heater, that's a specific type of delay compared to another points issue. There's a different type of delay for unreserved or reserved bikes going off and on the train, and different types of cancellations due to different types of animals that may or may be on the track. So there's a whole industry process, and any delay that happens on the railway has to be almost balanced out by the end of a certain time period, and the delay attributed to whoever caused it. And that comes down almost, he says, jumping ahead too much, into 3 key areas, and that is delay caused by Network Rail. So that very top bar chart there, that's Network Rail on Avanti West Coast. Other train operating companies, so companies like Cross Country and London North Western, which serve Stafford, any delay that they may cause on Avanti West Coast. And the one us as a railway company is most interested in is delays that we cause on ourselves, because they're the ones that we can address as easily as possible. So from those kind of 3 charts there, it's kind of important to see that access on the left is Network Rail, by their very nature, cause the most delay on Avanti West Coast in terms of our services. So that bar chart there goes up to over 100,000 minutes in those different time periods, so reported every quarter. Other train operating companies go up to about 40,000 minutes per quarter, on ourselves as well. And I put on that chart there, it's quite a long time period, so we go back as far as 2015 up to now, so almost 9 years worth of data. Avanti West Coast took over the West Coast franchise from Virgin Trains in December 2019. And things were pretty consistent with what would happen in a few years before that. Then probably the biggest event in our lifetimes, COVID hit in March 2020. And as you can see there, delay actually reduced quite significantly because the number of services reduced significantly on the railway. So there was less trains and less issues that actually caused onward delay. And as we kind of went through a couple of other COVID periods, delay we started to return to a kind of a consistent level that was experienced before. But in period 22-23 quarter two, it's probably where I go on to the next slide, is where our drivers stopped volunteering for overtime. Now that was quite a substantial event in our business, as overtime working is quite a consistent way of running the railway, and it has been the same since British Railway days. So a lot of operators still do use rest day working as a way of making sure they have a 7-day-a-week timetable. So if you can remember back maybe 5 or 6 years ago, before London North Western took over their franchise, the franchisee of the West Midlands trains had a period where they had problems with their Sunday services due to no one volunteering to work on a Sunday, because that wasn't written into people's contracts that they had to work a Sunday. It was a day of volunteering. So that overtime reduction meant that we couldn't run maybe around 20% of our services because we didn't have the staff to do it. We reduced our services in and out of London to 4 trains in and out until December 22. So that kind of 4 or 5 month period from the summer of 22 to December, we reduced our services quite significantly because we didn't have the resource to do, and that gave us a very reliable timetable, but very busy. And from December 22, we was able to increase to 7 trains an hour, and we've seen our service and performance improve. So those kind of challenges is reflecting on a couple of things there. So I've kind of talked through on my slide there about the working practices, you know, a very kind of unchanged practice for decades really. But COVID obviously substantially impacted on how we can run our services. A substantial amount of our drivers are in their 50s with health issues, which meant during COVID, when we still didn't know how serious it was, a lot of them had to be taken out and self-isolate. That isolation, that's around about 10% of our drivers, so a substantial amount. And even though once they'd could return to work, once they've had a vaccine, the requirements in driver training meant they had to be retested. They had to check that they still knew their routes, because things would have changed on their routes, such as signal sightings or speed limits. And it took some time to get those drivers back into the timetable, into being able to schedule into services. We also have a bit of a challenge in terms of our operation compared to others. So London North Western and Cross Country that serves Stafford, during COVID, because of the issues that was causing to their staff in terms of illness, they were able to reduce their services from, say, every 30 minutes to every hour, but actually double their trains together, so turn a 4-coach train into an 8-coach train, and still be able to run the same amount of seating space an hour as they would on their previous timetable. That's more challenging for us. Our trains are 11 coaches long in the main. We can't double up in the same way that other operators run. That would mean a 22-coach long train. There's no platform on our network that would allow us to do that. So we're very limited on what we can do and the flexibility that other operators could do. We also had problems that we had some legacy issues, say, because of our extension to the contract before we took over. Key fit issues such as refurbishing trains and driver training was only kind of started to be actually implemented once we took over in December 2019, and obviously COVID delayed those kind of ongoing issues now. And our driver training is due to the technology nature of our trains, such as they tilt, they run at 125 miles an hour. Our driver training takes about 18 months rather than 12 months. So it takes longer for our new drivers to come back onto the network. But we are going through quite a comprehensive driver campaign. We've also tried to target improving our gender balance across our business, especially in drivers. So we did a very kind of specific campaign focused on recruiting female drivers, and our numbers are increasing, and hence why we're one of the few operators that run all our trains with no overtime. All our services at the moment are run off a normal shift pattern. So just you can see on that chart there, you can see how that impact of COVID and then the change in the driver working shift, that as they were doing, how our numbers increased, but in the last few periods, our performance and issues caused by delays and cancellations due to our train crew, has reduced significantly. And that can be better shown on this slide here. So that shows you the past 12 months on cancellations that we caused ourselves. It did peak in that summer in December, but we're now running on a kind of maybe 1 or 2% of cancellations overall that's caused by ourselves. That's not to say that we still don't have a lot of challenges in our contract, and obviously the government decided to postpone the confirmation of any kind of long-term extension to our contract at the start of this year until they were confident that our performance had improved significantly to award that. So that meant we stayed in our EMA, which is Emergency Measures Contract, which was started during COVID in spring until actually this Sunday, where we now moved on to a more permanent National Rail contract that runs for a minimum of 3 years, possibly up to 9, depending on our performance. And the Secretary of State has got that opportunity to cancel the contract if he thinks our performance isn't suitable. Our performance in terms of our kind of on train and on time, our cancellations are very consistent with other operators in our field, as you can maybe see on that table there. We have challenges about keeping to our timetable. So on that column there, on time is, trains running to the timetable scheduled. T3, that's within 3 minutes. And T15 is within 15 minutes. And they're the kind of performance figures that we want to improve over the coming months as we move on to our new contract. That is very challenging because we operate on the busiest mixed-use railway in Europe. So that's a railway that has a number of operators. There's 9 in total. Significant amount of freight operation as well. There's been a significant amount of major engineering work over the last few years, or the last few months especially. And you might have noticed that in Staffordshire, where the Trent Valley has had a few weekends and time periods of delay to refurbish that. Another challenge you might have seen on Sunday, that Euston had a points failure during engineering work, so that impacted quite dramatically on our services as well. And we do operate a whole distance of very long distance services. The shortest one is 120 miles, and the longest is 400, so some real distances where issues can happen along the whole length. But that's our focus, is to get that performance level much higher than it currently is. At least as consistent as you can see with the other operators on that table. But we are coming into some of the future plans that have kind of been on hold since COVID and been delayed because of that. So you may see our new refurbished trains. We're over halfway in that refurbishment. That's increasing the number of seats for standard customers as well by converting some first-class accommodation to standard. They've got USB, they've got the, I'm not sure what the clever thing is, but the way you can put your mobile phone on the table and it will charge automatically through an induction loop. So a real increase in the services, in the quality and improvement on the train. This is the first refurbishment of such standard they've had in probably 20 years, a £117 million investment in our existing rolling stock. We're also in the process of introducing new trains onto our services. We currently have diesel trains which are used to serve Chester and the North Wales coast, which is unelectrified. We're buying bi-mode trains, so they will run on electric under electric wires, but then diesel where there is no wires. Those trains will serve Stafford on an hourly basis as they're introduced. We're also purchasing additional trains as well to provide that increase in capacity to hopefully build on existing demand and the returning demand that we're seeing on the network. We're also introducing new fares to meet the market demand. So we're introducing what's called super fare. This allows people to choose their day of travel and period of travel, say a morning, afternoon or evening, but we will confirm what train they'll actually be on a day before. So this gives a very affordable ticket, so £12 to London one way from Stafford, and we're hoping to roll that out for further destinations. Much more competitive, so it's there for those people who are maybe what we want to call time rich but cost poor, or more focused on cost, and while we still have those kind of different tickets that meet people who are more focused on their time and want to get into London at a certain time or such. We're still progressing, introducing a second hourly train from Liverpool to London, and that's planned to stop at Lichfield and Tamworth as part of its service. The trains are being ordered and being delivered. The drivers are being trained, and we're working with Network Rail to secure those spaces on the network to allow those services to be introduced, hopefully in 2024 or maybe 25. And hopefully when I have more details on that, I'll be able to come back and update you on those services being introduced. So, and in our December 22 timetable, we've been able to increase the number of services calling at Stafford. So before December 22, there was 1 train an hour from Stafford to London, going on towards Liverpool. There's now 3. There's the Liverpool train no longer stops at Stafford, but the Manchester via Wilmslow does. That's hourly. The Chester train stops at Stafford now, so that gives a quick half-hourly service to London, and our train that runs from London via Birmingham, then onwards north to Scotland, also stops at Stafford. So I think that's increased the number of destinations we serve from Stafford Station from around 4 to about over 20. So really increasing the destinations you can get to from Stafford across our network. So I think that's me, but happy to take any questions or any clarifications on what I've introduced there.
Thanks, Mark, for that presentation. Really, really good. Have any members got any questions for Mark? Graham? Microphone. Microphone.
I was looking at Avanti's overall performance against the average, which is 47% on time, when the average is 69% on time. And given that you're meant to be one of the best operators on the network, I was a bit surprised at your so low. So my question is, how many people are actually using the train these days? Because when we go to London, we prefer to drive. It's cheaper, it's quicker, and I don't understand why anybody wants to use Avanti these days. I was a great fan of Virgin, and all I can say is Avanti's gone downhill. Oh, the service from Stoke to London has gone downhill massively since Avanti took over, and it's almost pointless taking the train.
Well, hopefully I've kind of talked through the presentation that, yeah, we knew our services were bad, and there's a number of reasons for that. Some of that's down to us as the operator, some of that's down to other operators, some of that's down to Network Rail, and the wider impacts that we've seen through COVID and industrial action has impacted our services. We are seeing a steady return to our passenger numbers. There is still lots of impacts, such as industrial action, that provides an inconsistency. People want reliability, and we've failed in reliability. We've been open and honest that last year we had real problems in providing a regular and consistent service, and then when we did put something in place that enabled a regular and consistent service, it was very busy, and we couldn't provide those cheaper tickets and advanced fares that you would have seen under Virgin before. But we're progressing towards that in terms of our services and pricing, and we're hoping that that continues over the future months.
Doing it now. Anybody else? Charlotte, you're twitching.
Yeah, I just, with the cancellation of the northern leg of HS2, How do you predict that that will impact on your services given the capacity issues?
I think, so part of the business that we are, so the overall business we're called is West Coast Partnership, and that's made up of Avanti West Coast, as in running the trains now, and what's called West Coast Partnership Development, which is the business that's working out what services will run on HS2 Phase 1, HS2 Phase 2A, as it was at the time, and on the West Coast Main Line post HS2. So obviously the announcement of Network North was maybe just over 2 weeks ago now. We're waiting on that further detail from the DFT on certain aspects in that study, such as the enhanced Handsacre conjunction, which is mentioned, but is not really defined in what that could be. And once we get more clarity, we'll be working with Network Rail, HS2, and with the DFT to come up with those kind of options of what it could mean for services. What it means for us doesn't mean much in the short term because, opening with HS2 is still years away, and that's why we've got this period to work out what the services could and could be. And some of that is engaging with stakeholders along the route in terms of what services they would like to see to be provided. So it's a bit unclear, but I'm hoping we have a better idea in the coming months.
Unlike Graham, I do use the train when I go down to London because I don't like the hassle of driving. So this new super fare of yours, are you intending to run that right the way through the year? And who are you focusing that particular fare on? Presumably you're talking about people who perhaps are retired, haven't got that time constraint, they can travel whenever they want, on a particular day, but, it doesn't really matter which train. So are you thinking about running that right the way through the year, including high peak areas like summer and Christmas?
Yes, I think we'll keep it open. It's the idea of the premise is that there's always some trains that we've got empty seats on, even during peak periods of the year or even peak times. We know there is an opportunity to sell those seats, but we've got to manage that properly. The market, who it's targeted at, is quite broad. Retired people are one of them. It was initially thought it'd be good for students because they can also be a bit more time rich, but more cost sensitive. It's been run out originally from Manchester and Birmingham stations, so those routes first, and we've been slowly introducing all the other destinations on our route and see how far we can introduce it.
Considering your problems with reliability, can people rely on the fact that they will be given a train to travel on during their time span that they want, whether it be an afternoon or a morning, and that they don't suddenly find themselves expecting to travel on a particular day and then the day before to find out that actually there's no train that they've been allocated to? How have you found that when you've piloted that in other areas?
I think we've found that there's always been a service. I mean, we've introduced it on the services where we've got the most. So obviously Manchester to London, we run 3 trains an hour normally. And if one of those is cancelled for a whole multitude of reasons that I've discussed, from ourselves to Network Rail, then the ticket's transferable. Then if your train's certainly cancelled, you can go on the next one or the one before. Very much like the same you can do with advanced tickets now. This one's sold online only. It's obviously the actual train is confirmed at a very later date compared to when you buy an advanced ticket normally. So there will be that kind of reliability that you'll have a service booked for a certain train, and if that train's not available, then it'll be available on the next service.
Any further questions from the committee? No? Darryl, quick, did you want to come in?
Apologies, Chair. I appreciate I'm not part of the committee, but I was hoping I could ask a question still.
Go on
if
then,
that's okay.
I will let you.
I was just wondering what impact the West Midlands rail freight interchange will have in terms of reliability of service or not, in terms of the amount of rail freight that might occur as a result of that.
So this is the facility on the line between Wolverhampton and Stafford, isn't it? It hasn't been raised to us as a business, or our train operating staff normally, as in my role in talking to stakeholders, hasn't raised any kind of issues around it. But I'm sure it'll be a watching brief. We do. Some of our performance is down to Network Rail, as I kind of taught there, and sometimes we discuss about maybe starting the train a few minutes earlier or later to avoid maybe congestion down the line. So, but that hasn't been a specific issue.
Thank you. I'd like to now bring in Councillor Jeremy Pert, who raised this as an issue with us. So hence why it's on the committee's agenda. So over to you, Jeremy.
Thank you, and good morning, Mark. Thank you for your presentation. As a member of the County Council for the Stafford area, and also on the Borough Council, the performance, railway performance, is a key issue, because if you're not performing, then broadly speaking, you're letting down anyone else who is trying to use Stafford as a key hub station. You know, I know people who are coming across from Shropshire, across the whole of Staffordshire, to use Stafford station as a regional hub to get in and out of. And if you're not performing, then there is a fundamental problem. I think one way of reading your performance stats, and bearing in mind these are only sort of, I don't know, a month's worth of stats in August of this year, but I think one way of reading your performance stats is by looking at yours plus cross countries, because effectively I don't mind which train operator I use, frankly. I just want to get from A to B. And if you do it, that's great, and if cross country do it, that's great. But I do think you need to look at both of them, and the cumulative performance on both of your services is average. I originally raised this because I used to travel down to London 3 times a week for work, and what I used to be able to do, and there are other members of this committee who did the same, what I used to be able to do was rely on the train service to get in and out of London and do a day's work. What I found in the last few years is that you're checking the trains before you go to bed for cancellations, you're checking them halfway through the night, you're checking them first thing in the morning, you get to the station, it's still cancelled. So the knock-on performance of your company, and principally your company, is quite painful for lots of people. If I then put on the back of it, and this was sort of mentioned at the time of the cancellation of HS2, that traffic numbers, contrary to what's happening in the rest of the country, are down 31% overall, then you have to say, is there a cause and effect here? I.e., is your performance persuading people not to use the trains? I, for one, used to use the trains a lot at weekends. Don't anymore, because I can't rely on them. And I wonder whether some of the impact that you have created is that loss of passenger numbers. And frankly, if you find another alternative means of transport, which is easier and more reliable, then you're going to use it on a more regular basis. So I guess my first point is really about what is the impact of the poor performance of your organisation. The second point I just wanted to make related, and it's not happening at the moment, but at one stage within the timetabling, there was a 3-hour train. There was a 1 hour 20, 1 hour 15. There was then a 2-hour train and then a 3-hour train. But frankly, I didn't, and there was a reduction of the other train services. And frankly, I think, you know, there needs to be cleverer timetabling, because I can't see how that 3-hour train actually performed anything in terms of, yes, it was cheap, but by the time you got to London, you were just about coming back again, just about. And the third point I just wanted to make was related to the Handsacre link. You referenced the Handsacre link a minute ago. Could you maybe give some more detail in terms of the Handsacre link, in terms of what you think is happening? Because for Stafford to receive classic compatible trains, then the Handsacre link is critical going forwards. Thank you.
I'll start with the last one first, if that's okay. I do not know what Handsacre is preference, to be honest. Obviously, the Network North announcement was 2 weeks ago. What the enhanced Handsacre junction is, and it will feed through if phase 2A is not going to happen is unknown to us as a business yet. We've had those discussions with DFT about the announcement and what it might mean and what that changes to the work that we're contracted to do. But there hasn't that come through into something as the baseline that they want us to work to. Because there's different options about how you connect Handsacre Junction to the existing network and what that might mean. I don't want to theorise, but I can think of things that you could do, spend a little bit more money and get a bit more. Is that something that the government wants to do before committing to whatever option it is? So at the moment, as a business, we're waiting from our clients, the DFT, to update us the most. Totally agree on poor performance. The railway, the reliability is across, and we've been the poster boy for bad performance, and I think quite rightly so. We won't deny that it's been a challenge, and hopefully I've talked through some of the reasons why we stand out a little bit more than other operators due to the inflexibility that we may have in our trains and the challenges around our resource in terms of drivers. We think we're getting into the right place. We think we put a plan in action before Christmas. We feel that we're getting results now. The news and the challenge can still be, how do you change that perception of the name and the brand until you get maybe another good 4, 5, 6 months of really good performance, because then people can trust. We have to rebuild that trust. The challenges in, so when we say the 3-hour train, do you mean like the journey time from Stafford to London? I think one of the challenges is that our London via Birmingham to the North train now stops at Stafford. That used to just pass through Stafford. You'll see London Euston as a destination because that is eventually when it's doing, but because it's going through Birmingham, it makes the journey a lot longer. So I'd always want to it's one of those timetabling things, and how you promote it is that that's not really a service. If you're at Stafford, you want to get on to go to London, you want to focus on our train that's come from Chester or from Manchester. That's for one if you want to go into Birmingham or get to Coventry or Wolverhampton more than a branding. That was more to provide Stafford with better connectivity going northwards, which it's lacked. People had to get on at Stafford and then change at Crewe or go into Manchester to go northwards. I think, has that covered all the queries enough?
Thanks. The other thing I noticed, and I was just sort of looking at your train timetable just by chance for tomorrow. I'm not going anywhere tomorrow because I'll be somewhere else in the country. But if I look at the sort of the cost of tickets, the 10.52 is £235 return to London. The 11.14 is, 11.24 is, the choice of trains are sort of relatively inexpensive and in off-peak times normally, because I'd normally associate 10.42, 11.14, 11.24 as off-peak. What are you doing to optimise, hopefully maximise passenger numbers using the train? Because cost is a tool, and it does strike me that at £235 you'd have to do a lot of work to justify that sort of train fare.
You know better numbers than me from tomorrow. Obviously, a lot of the fares on the railway are regulated, so are set by the government and things like that. So those fares are that. The ones that us as an operator have been able to do in the past is advanced ticketing, and such as the super fare. So the idea of spread that demand and yield around. So they're the tools that we have as a business. There should be cheaper tickets than that and an off-peak thing, especially from around Stafford. So it may be that a lot of tickets are sold out. Because one of the challenges of the ticketing way is that everyone can buy a ticket. There's nothing to stop anyone buying a ticket before that train. It's not like a low-cost airline where once the tickets are sold out, that's it. There's this kind of constant thing. So we have to provide certain capacity, and for decades, again, back to British Rail, the pricing has been one of the ways to manage that demand by trying to nudge people towards other trains away from the peak. But I think the best thing is, obviously, the example is if we can introduce a second train from Liverpool and hopefully introduce even more services that we've had to cut back because of the impact of COVID on driver training, things like that. the more capacity you provide, the more opportunity you've got to offer cheaper tickets as part of that. And that's one of the challenges that we had during that 4 trains an hour thing, is that we could only retail the regulated fares because we had no spare capacity to offer the cheaper fares to move on. And that's where the super fare and all those kind of opportunities we've got now is, as we've increased our timetable, we can provide more affordable tickets.
Thanks, Chair. I guess my main message here, I mean, it's nice to see the performance is improving, that is good news, is you are a vital lever to the economic development of this county, because it allows people to either relocate their offices, it allows people connectivity into London. So you're a vital lever in terms of the economy, you're a vital lever in terms of tourism, because it is still the county town, Stafford. You're a vital lever in terms of that whole service economy and people wanting to go shopping and go to other places. And obviously, from an environmental point of view, you should be less pollutant than using the car. So you're a key partner. So when you fail, then lots of the rest of us, because of those linkages, also fail. And maybe I was pleased to see that you have an aspiration of working more closely with the county council and the borough council, and maybe I could encourage you to do so that when you look at things like timetabling and when you look at the impact of fares and capacity, that's done in the round to try and optimise those 4 areas I've just talked about, because I do think it's important, and you're not operating in a vacuum, in an isolation, notwithstanding the issues that you as a company have experienced over the last couple of years. Thank you, Chair.
Is there anything else you want to come back on, Mark?
I can only say that the reason my role exists, and I worked in local authority and experience, is that we have someone who understands a little bit more, that kind of thing. Obviously, the government during COVID put these emergency measures in, so kept the railway operating rather than, make costs, run it as more of a private sector and put people on furlough or things like that. So that enabled us better. I certainly agree that we are there we're part of that makes the glue of the country work together. Transport's very important in realising all the opportunities and economic benefits and social benefits, environmental benefits of that. And yes, part of my role is to work closely with the county and the borough, and working closely on options for the station, supporting the Stafford Gateway development, and again, engaging with services. And it was actually engaging with Staffordshire County Council and then asking about our current train that runs London, Birmingham to the north. They raised, is there any possibility that could stop at Stafford? And the question was asked, and it was put into the timetable. So very much so, and I'm hoping that will continue, and we're in a stronger and a better place going forward after the last few years.
Graham, have you got something else you want to...
Yeah, in listening to the debate, I do appreciate that at 11 coaches, you can't add another 11 coaches, but you could add 2 more coaches. I think a lot of the stations will take 13 coaches. But also, I've got a friend who regularly travels to London from Stoke because it's the fastest train, hour and a half. And they say that if they go in the early morning to get into London before 10 o'clock, that the train can be quite crowded, yet there'll be 4 first-class coaches that are pretty much empty. So can we not convert 2 of those first-class coaches to ordinary class coaches, add 2 more, and that would give you 4 more coaches on the busiest times with the same amount of staff. So I just think that would be enormous help. Perhaps you'd like to come back on that.
Yeah, so the Pendolino trains, which were purchased back in 2000, they started off, I think, as 8-car and then became 9-car, and then it was extended in 2012, where of the 57 or 59 that we have, about 30 were extended to 11-car. I think we've reached a point now in terms of that extension in 2012 where the railway actually bought an additional number because of increased demand. Unfortunately, the Pendolino's not made anymore, so actually buying additional coaches to extend them is, no one makes them. It's almost an expired product, hence why we're buying new Hitachi trains as a way of increasing capacity. Our refurbishment work has seen one of the current first-class coaches converted into standard accommodation. So of a 11-car train, there's now 3 coaches of first class, as in seating, but one of them is also regularly used on a lot of services as a standard premium, which is a mid-range point between first class and standard, where you can upgrade but don't get the food and drink offer. So that refurbishment, I think, has added about 10. I did do the numbers on this. It was because we're having a discussion about, because all our 11 cars have just been finished, so we're now working on our 9-car refurbishment. I think it's like an extra 10% increase in standard seating compared to what they were before. So we are limited about what we can do with the stock, and we've done what we think is the right decision, provided something that gives flexibility but increase the number of standard accommodation. And obviously, don't want to talk about the elephant in the room around HS2. A lot of that was about bringing new rolling stock onto the network as well, and how that could provide increased capacity.
Okay, if there are no further questions for Mark, thank you for coming in today. It's been a real insight into what's going on. Keep the performance going upwards, and hopefully Jeremy won't come into another meeting to moan about Stafford. But it's nice to have your insight as a local member, Jeremy, because we don't have a Stafford member, so it's nice to see that you can give an insight into what's actually happening in the real world, which is great. So thank you, Mark, for coming in. You're now free to leave, or you can sit and listen to the rest. It's entirely up to you. What we might do is look at a time frame of bringing you back. Maybe is 6 months too soon?
I think 6 months is a good period. Happy to put this as a regular in the
Yeah.
diary, if
Okay.
that's what you want to, on performance. I think
Yeah.
6 months where we'd be in there. Do my maths. Yeah, that we should have a better idea of where our new trains are and
Okay.
they're introduced into service. So yeah.
So Jonathan will be in touch with which committee meeting it will fall into, and we'll look forward to having you back with us in the room. Thanks very much.
Chair, can I just ask that there's no point in coming back unless we've got much better details of the Handchurch interchange, because that is absolutely crucial to how Avanti is going to be running in the future, particularly for Stafford, Stoke, and the feeder trains that come in, or feeder routes that come in. So I really think it's absolutely important that before Avanti come back, we do have much more clarity on how trains are going to move from HS2 onto the West Coast Main Line. Thanks.
Go on.
I was just going to suggest that I think that's a very good point, that it's probably worth inviting someone from Network Rail or HS2 as well to that, to give the wider picture.
We've got those contacts as well. So Jeremy, quickly.
Thank you, Chair. It may also be interesting to look at stations where there is no step-free access. So Stone Station, for example, doesn't have step-free access. So, you know, from an accessibility point of view, would be a concern. But maybe Mark could bring a picture across the county, what that picture looks like.
Okay, thanks for that then. And we'll move on. Mark, you're free to leave if you wish.
I'm happy to stay and ask any questions afterwards if that helps as well.
That's absolutely fine, no worries. So we'll move straight on to item 5, which is the work programme. Jonathan?
Thanks, Chairman. It's just the usual work programme. A couple of items have been highlighted in green, one of which is the Local Transport Plan 4 item, which we've been asked to move if possible, to an extra meeting in January. So we're currently looking at the 11th of January, but I'll confirm to members as and when, you know, we've made the arrangements. I think that's it, Chairman. Thank you from me.
And the date of the next meeting is Wednesday, the 22nd of November.
It isn't, Chairman.
Oh, no, it isn't, is it? When is it now?
It's Thursday, the 9th of November.
9th of November,
Hopefully.
sorry.
Just on that, Chair, with the air quality one that we wanted to move back as well, so that we could actually get the detail in rather than do it as a partial one.
So the 9th of November then, we've got the environment strategy from Simon Tagg. Is that correct? It's been changed that many times. We've confused ourselves, I think.
No, that's the 22nd, Chairman. So for the 9th of November, at the moment, we've got the Community Learning Self-Assessment Report. We've got Highways Network Management, including permits, annual report, and I think that's it.
Okay. So then, so then we've got a meeting on the 22nd as well.
Yeah, and we've also been requested, Chairman, from Simon Tagg to remove the provision of waste transfer facility item that was going to come to the 9th of November, which he's emailed you about.
Okay. And don't forget, members, you need to do your questionnaire online to visit the History Centre. If you haven't done it, you won't be able to go. It's really easy to do. It takes a couple of minutes. And Jonathan, well, it might be irrelevant to you, Graham, but it's got to be done. And Jonathan sent you the details of what you need to write in where. And also you need to note that the December meeting is not happening on the 21st of December because that's Christmas week and some of us are very, very busy. So that's changed to Wednesday, the 13th of December now. And unfortunately, it's an afternoon meeting, so sorry for everyone that doesn't like afternoon meetings, including myself. So if there's nothing else, we haven't, the item 7 is exclusion of the public. We've got nothing in exclusion. Sam?
Just want to say, sorry, Jonathan, that it's north walls, not south walls, on the questionnaire that
Yes.
you fill in.
Yeah, it is South
You won't
Walls.
get in otherwise.
Yeah.
I was just testing, Chairman.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of today's meeting. Those of you that are on the Civil Parking Enforcement Teams meeting at 11:30, you can either stay here or find somewhere else or go home if you've got time. Thanks very much, everyone.